2015 was a big year for video games, but you know what? Next year is gonna be huge too, if not bigger. That's why GameRanks wants to talk to you today about the top 40 PC games of 2016. Number 40, Lost Ark. Are you a big fan of Diablo or other hack and slash games that are similar to Diablo, maybe even Zelda? Well, Lost Ark basically exists for you. It's a gorgeous MMORPG version of that style game. There's gonna be these really massive open world battlefields and a PvE arena feature where players can battle the light monsters. It really looks like a massive MMORPG that's just gonna be something great for Diablo players, and believe me, we can sometimes be a desperate lot. Number 39, Battlefleet Gothic Armada. Okay, so there's a lot of Warhammer 40k games. A lot. But if this RTS set in the universe doesn't get you excited, then you haven't looked at it yet. It's developed on the Unreal Engine 4, and it's boasting extreme customization all over. From your defense systems, to your support subsystems, to your weaponry, to managing every ship during and after battles. And on top of that, being in one of the coolest universes out there, this is a gorgeous looking RTS. Number 38, Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen. So a couple years ago, Capcom released an RPG by the same team that made Resident Evil, Devil May Cry, and Breath of Fire. And over time, they've made some improvements to that game through various DLCs, and created a really massive open world that actually engrosses you and makes you feel as though you have consequence within the world itself. This game plays a whole lot like if you combine Oblivion with Monster Hunter, which is a weird combo, but trust me, it works really well. And frankly, there's a certain kind of excitement that comes along with having this kind of game on the PC. Number 37, Homefront: The Revolution. It's just every kind of weird that you want from Homefront at this point. It's 2 years after the first Homefront in 2029. There's a Korean invasion in Philadelphia, and it's obviously your responsibility to stop it. Not exactly a killer plot or anything, but who expected that? Who asked for that even? It's Homefront. It's big, it's obnoxious, and frankly, Philadelphia is a great setting for Homefront. The folks in charge of the sequel are really happy with what they've been allowed to do without THQ's involvement, moving from a very linear progression to a much more open world execution, which, to be frank, that's kind of what Homefront as an idea lends itself to. Number 36, Albion Online is a sandbox MMO. You can play this game on Windows, iOS, and Android, with other people playing it on any of those platforms. And if that makes it sound like it's dumbed down, you're very wrong about that. All the items and buildings are crafted by the players in the world. It has a crafting and player-driven economy, combat to claim territories, or even just attack and watch the world burn. You don't need to care about the spoils to be a victor. And here's the other thing, in the PvP, when you die, people can fully loot you. The combat actually looks pretty unique in that everything is classless, and a lot of people can play it at once on a lot of different platforms. Number 35, Unravel is a physics-based puzzle platform game. It's one of those unique games that just immediately gets a fan base. The mechanics combine traditional platforming with some puzzles that you have to solve using the yarn that you are made of. And I've seen a couple of comparisons to Little Big Planet, but I don't think they're the same kind of game on account that's a creative platforming game, whereas this is a puzzle platforming game with a heavy emphasis on physics that I can't wait to dig into. Number 34, Dreadnought is a game where you take control of a large spacecraft and fulfill the role as captain using the weapons to attack other very large ships. And there's a very specific emphasis on very large ships. This is not like a rogue type situation. You are the captain. It's not going to be dogfights. A lot of this is about strategy, anticipation, and positioning. On top of that, there's multiplayer that sounds pretty damn fun. Number 33, For Honor is a hack and slash game that Ubisoft is bringing out that takes a pretty known concept and grounds it a little bit by not making it fantasy oriented. It's actually intended to be somewhat historical and gives you the option to play as medieval knights, samurai, and Vikings, to give you a few examples. It is a hack and slash, but it's a little bit more tactical, and the battle system is actually called the Art of Battle. And they structured a lot of the multiplayer modes around shooters, with the creative director of the game actually calling it a shooter with swords. Yeah, sign me up, thanks. Number 32, The Witness is Jonathan Blow's next game, and essentially is kind of like an open world puzzle game, if that makes sense to you. It's inspired by Myst, so anybody who is from my age bracket is gonna go, oh, maybe I will try that. It has been in development for a very long time, and it really does look like an advanced title that does have a bit of mystery surrounding it, as Jonathan Blow has actually kind of avoided telling people what the big core mechanic is, calling it kind of a spoiler. Now, Braid was a great game. I love Myst. I really look forward to see what Blow comes up with. Number 31, Shadow Warrior 2. Now, you may not remember the old Shadow Warrior games. That's fine. 3D Realms hasn't existed in quite a while. It's from the Duke Nukem era, though. Shadow Warrior is kind of a so violent it's funny game, but it also is touting a much more clever sense of humor and mechanics that really just get why old school shooters were good, but don't just leave them exactly as they were. Now, the reboot came out in 2013, and clearly Shadow Warrior 2 is the sequel. And from the looks of it, it's going to build a lot on the original game, including a procedural damage system, bringing in the ability to blow off limbs and body parts. Number 30 is Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 2, which is obviously sort of a weird mashup between a third-person shooter and a tower defense game. But this is basically an update on what is a very massively popular game that has a weird, fun charm that for some reason I can't put it down when I play it, with a very large amount of improvements, everything from the user interface to just the amount of modes. It does have a story, but it's basically a turf war, and it's not really necessary. I'm a big fan of the first, and I'm really looking forward to the second. Number 29, Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands is a tactical shooter and is the very first entry to the Tom Clancy series that has an open world environment. Now the game is not set in the future, instead it's set in present day Bolivia, and a certain special operations unit, the Ghosts, are sent in to try to reveal a connection between a drug cartel and the local government. I'm pretty excited to see if Ubisoft actually pulls this off, because we see plenty of fantasy open world games, but not so much tactical shooters in an open world. That's gonna be interesting. Number 28. Adrift is a first-person interactive fiction game, meaning it's a walking simulator, but let's stop calling that a genre that's bad. They're not always done right, I'm not saying they are, but neither is any other genre. Adam Orth basically came up with this idea after he really screwed up and said deal with it in regards to the original Xbox One DRM stuff. Hopefully Adam Orth is a better writer and game designer than he is a PR man. Number 27. Darkest Dungeon combines a mix of real-time movement and turn-based combat and this art style that is just one of the most memorable I have seen in a very long time. Stress actually plays a factor in this. If stress gets really high and it remains unchecked, they actually develop afflictions, which from the looks of it seem to be kind of like status ailments. I like that. And to just point out one other thing, why is it that side-scrolling RPGs are happening so much and looking so cool? Number 26, Dark Souls 3. Did you like Dark Souls 1, Demon Souls, Dark Souls 2, Bloodborne? I mean, that's a long list of games that are from the same developer that follow a similar formula and are all great. On top of that, they're adding a few combat mechanics like ready stance, which are essentially special abilities. And on top of that, all of the levels are designed basically just to kill you. Tell me, what more could you ask for with the Souls game? Number 25, No Man's Sky. A totally procedurally generated universe that you get to explore in a spaceship, combat enemies that are unique to every planet, and generally just see things that you could probably never imagine without having dipped your toes in No Man's Sky. Everything we've seen of this game looks amazing, and it's almost hard to believe that it's real. In fact, that's the reservation people have about it, if it will actually deliver on the massive promises that it's made. So far, it's looking pretty good though, I have to say. Number 24, Firewatch is this game that looks incredibly interesting. The art style is like a painting that has come to life. You play as Henry and you uncover clues about various weird things that have been happening around you and somehow relate back to a security tower being pillaged while he was out on patrol. Intrigue is what we are dealing with here. It actually relates to real life as it happens in the aftermath of the Yellowstone fires of 1988. Apparently the game doesn't have a whole lot of combat, if any at all, but it takes a lot of its inspiration from BioShock, namely Atlas, and how he interacts with the player. Number 23, Mafia 3 is a highly anticipated new entry to the Mafia series. If you're a fan of either of the first two games, I'm sure that this is a really big interest for you. It takes place in 1968 New Orleans. Oh, it's open world. Hopefully a little less hub-like than previous Mafia games, but still, you'll be able to interrogate NPCs, and on top of that, you can recruit lieutenants from a cast of available characters, including the protagonist from the previous game, Mafia 2. Number 22, Street Fighter V. So for one, the art style of Street Fighter V is fantastic. It looks amazing. I have never seen or imagined a Street Fighter that looks this good. And on top of that, they bring back some of the best features of Street Fighter 3, like the EX gauge, as well as the stun meter, which honestly 3 was definitely an underrated entry into the franchise. And though Street Fighter 4 didn't exactly do away with everything, for whatever reason didn't get as much attention as it maybe should have. In my opinion, it's probably because it wasn't quite the transition between 2D and 3D that the Street Fighter V looks to be. Number 21, Endless Space 2 is a turn-based strategy science fiction 4X game. Up to 8 players, either AI or real people playing, basically try to take over a randomly generated galaxy. It had a little bit of a learning curve, but people really liked the original. Endless Space 2 seems like it's a little bit secretive at the moment, but the footage that they have shown is absolutely gorgeous. As far as 4X games go, this might be the one that kind of widens the reach of the genre. 20, Far Cry Primal is an action-adventure game and really isn't that different than the regular Far Cry series on paper, except it's set in the Stone Age. And being it's prehistoric, your regular gameplay like vehicles and gunplay just aren't there. You have to craft all the weapons and gradually build skills like making fire and cooking food. You can also have companion animals like saber-toothed tigers and badgers, and a pet owl, which you can directly control and find out more about your environment. Honestly, once you get the full description, it sounds bizarre, but kudos to Ubisoft for trying something different here. Number 19, Hitman, is the latest in a series that has kind of gotten some flack recently. It's serving as a prequel rather than a reboot, and is going out of its way to kind of return to the roots of the series. The levels are all essentially sandboxes, and you can do what you want to advance the mission objectives. Contracts mode is also coming back, so fans of the series should probably be excited. Number 18, Blade and Soul is a MMORPG that combines open world mechanics with a combination of various martial arts. There's various PvE and PvP events, as well as a pretty extensive combo system to make the combat feel reminiscent of a fighting game. Number 17, Mirror's Edge Catalyst. I don't know if you ever played the original game, but it's a really great game, albeit with a few minor flaws, and from the sounds of it, the developers are trying to address all of those in the new version. Its build is neither a reboot or a prequel, but basically being an origin story that kind of sounds like a reboot and a prequel to me. One way or the other, I don't really care. Supposedly the mechanics are vastly improved, and they started off great last game, so I can't really see any reason to think this will be anything other than fantastic. Number 16, Deus Ex Mankind Divided. Basically what looks like a very triumphant evolution of human revolution, Mankind Divided continues to follow Adam Jensen, who's working to stop terrorist attacks. The plot will find Jensen basically attempting to find balance between whatever shadowy organization runs who he works for, as well as demanding equality for augmented individuals, which are looked at as a threat thanks to the events of the previous game, and indeed the climate in general. Number 15, Torment Tides of Numenera is essentially a spiritual successor to Planetscape Torment. The game is an absolutely beautiful reminder that a game doesn't have to be entirely 3D in order to be gorgeous. Do RPGs have to be third-person follow-along games? No, they don't. And I'd like to thank the developers of Torment for showing everybody a great-looking example that seems like it's really going to be a nice shot in the arm for the genre. Number 14, Kingdom Come Deliverance is a 15th century role-playing game that takes place in Bohemia. It features a classless role-playing system, as is seeming to be a rising trend, that allows players to customize their skills and create the roles that they want to take on their own. On top of a really varied combat system, the game also features a needs system which requires you to sleep and eat in order to stay healthy. Equipment and clothing degrades and requires repair. Basically, you're not just fighting enemies, you're also fighting time. Number 13, Rise of the Tomb Raider is breaking out of Xbox One exclusive hell and landing on the PC in January. Now, if you've played the reboot, you know that the gameplay has improved massively over the original series. But Rise of the Tomb Raider really just refines the idea of an open world game to be something that doesn't distract you away from your main quest. Really, it's a delicate balance, and Rise of the Tomb Raider nails it. I can't wait. It'll be nice not to have to boot up Xbox One to play it. Number 12, Divinity Original Sin 2. What's particularly cool about this is that there's going to be a skill crafting system. Where we've been talking about classless role-playing games for a while now, this is just that to the nth degree. On top of that, it's calling its friendship, romantic relationship, and hatred system Love and Hate. An obvious but well-titled system. Number 11, Mass Effect Andromeda. Not a whole lot is known about this game, but can you believe we're going to be able to continue the Mass Effect series? That's the main takeaway for me. I love Mass Effect. The games are just fantastic, and each entry to the series just got better and better, and by the time we got to the end of it, it was a very smooth, well-polished shooter on top of having a great overreaching plot. I can't wait to dive back into the universe and explore the Andromeda Galaxy with a new cast that hopefully is able to mimic the attachment that we all felt to the original. Number 10, Star Citizen. That's right, Star Citizen is supposedly finally going to launch next year, and that means both Squadron 42 and Star Citizen: The Persistent Universe itself. Both are very different, Squadron 42 being a single-player experience, a campaign that takes place within the universe of Star Citizen, and Star Citizen being a massively multiplayer online persistent universe that you can basically go around and do anything in. If they actually pull this off, color me impressed, because it is possibly the biggest undertaking anyone has ever done for a computer game. Number 9. The Division is a Tom Clancy game in which you take the role of an officer going around a seemingly post-apocalyptic world and fighting with people online. It looks like a pretty innovative game, and we're all very impressed with it. We just kind of wanted to come out. Number 8, World of Warcraft Legion, the 6th expansion set to the massively multiplayer online game. Obviously, World of Warcraft is what I'm talking about. Not only will this expansion increase the level cap to 110, it will also bring a number of new weapons as well as changes to player classes. On top of that, a new hero class joins the game in the Demon Hunter. There's a whole new plot and a much expanded setting, and WoW fans are obviously going to need this expansion pack. Number 7, Ashes of Singularity is aiming to deliver a brand new real-time strategy type experience by bringing in scale. The game claims to be the first native 64-bit RTS game, which in theory would provide it much more access to system resources, and uses a new 3D engine that fully leverages all multi-core functions in modern PCs. It's also among the first, if not the first, to support Microsoft's new DirectX 12, and if the game plays as good as its list of technical features, frankly it's going to be quite the game. Number 6, Dishonored 2. Okay, where to start? The original Dishonored is fantastic. It is phenomenal. If you haven't played it and you like stealth or first-person shooters or unique games or great level design, play it. I really truly cannot imagine a scenario where the second Dishonored game isn't really good. And judging from the gameplay trailer, which shows us so many new powers and possibilities, plus the prospect of playing as Emily Kaldwin as a fully realized powerful adult, ooh, I can't wait. Number 5, Total War Warhammer is a turn-based RTS, which follows the Total War gameplay, but places it instead of in a historical setting into the Warhammer universe. And I don't know about you, but knowing how good the Total War games are, and knowing how cool the Warhammer universe is, I have to say my body is ready. Please give me the RTS Warhammer game. Thank you. Number 4, Paragon is a character-based shooter game, and that is kind of the extent we know about it. It's made by Epic Games, who created Unreal Tournament, the Gears of War series, and even Infinity Blade. Now, they have a lot of experience with good shooters, clearly, so I'm thinking that Paragon is probably going to be exactly that. Number 3, XCOM 2. This sequel to Enemy Unknown will take place 20 years later and assume that XCOM lost. XCOM 2 will obviously continue the story and build on the turn-based tactics battle model that was really great in Enemy Unknown. Number 2, Overwatch by Blizzard. Okay, yeah, not really known for first-person shooters, Overwatch really looks like an amazing effort out of Blizzard. It's colorful, it's gorgeous, it's free to play, and features squad-based combat for 2 opposing teams of 6 players apiece. It really just looks like a cool world, and the gameplay itself looks like a good balance between arcade and PC shooters. And finally, number 1 is the Doom reboot. What spent many years being refined as first Doom 4, which would have been the newest entry in a continuity, Bethesda and id Software went back to the drawing board and created a reboot. They realized they needed to take the core Doom gameplay and update it. It can't just be another shooter. It's Doom. It's the mother of all shooters. But id Software, under the guidance of Bethesda, who has done the same thing before with Fallout 3, taken a franchise and changed it significantly while retaining great elements from the originals to very good response. To put it in the simplest way possible, I believe it can happen. And after seeing the footage, I am more than excited about Doom. What are you looking forward to the most in 2016? There's a lot of games coming out, so frankly, the choices are not sparse. Leave a comment, let us know what you think, and don't forget to click the like button as well. If you haven't subscribed to GameRanks, now is a wonderful time to do so. We upload brand new videos every single day of the week. The best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. As always, thank you very much for watching this video, and we will see you next time right here on GameRanks.